Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee today on Wednesday, the 11th of June. And welcome to our new members, Councillors Gray, Rouse and Bayes. So we're very pleased to have you join us. Do we have any apologies for absence, Emma?
Received apologies from Councillor Saul Penfold.
Thank you very much. Do we have any substitutes today? And I would encourage you, when you can't make the meeting, if you can find a substitute. I know many of you do, but it's always nice if we have substitutes if you can't make it. So thank you. Do we have any public questions and statements?
None received.
Okay, so now we go on to the minutes. And Emma, thank you so much for working so hard on the minutes. It's very much appreciated. So first of all, we'll look at the minutes from the meeting in April. And does anyone have any matters of accuracy on page 1, page 2, page 3? In the last but one paragraph, could we have a 2 after hard to quantify? I thought that possibly was missing, if that's okay. And also in the third paragraph, I think when we're talking in the last but one line about the Norwich Ipswich, is that an area? Yeah. Thank you very much. Any other questions of accuracy on page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, and page 7? Page 7, I think Councillor Cushing, you probably said that some of the actions in the third paragraph in 291 rather than Dome. If that could be corrected, that would be brilliant. Otherwise, is everyone happy to take those as an accurate rendition of the meeting? Yep, I'll sign those off then. Thank you. And then we go to the minutes of the May meeting. And again, on page 9, do you have any questions, Councillor Cushing?
Yes, I just think in attendees, I note that Councillor Dixon has been omitted as an attendee.
Right. Okay, you got that, Emma?
No.
Page 10, any questions? Third paragraph, it says the banking hub could not currently, so fourth line, cash deposits residents. I think it's cash deposits from residents or residents apostrophe cash deposits. Do you think for that? Sorry, I used to be a copy editor, so any other matters of accuracy on page 10, 11, page 11, page 12, page 12, yes.
On page 12, fourth paragraph down, it's the last sentence reads, the chairman said that progress had been made recently. There's a Y missing off recently.
Got me that one.
And now it says during to a close.
Yeah.
It should be drawing to a close.
Good.
Nothing exciting.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Page 13. Page 14. Go on. Yep.
I don't know if you spot these. Third paragraph, at council holiday suggested that Anglia Water, it should be Anglian Water.
Have you got that, Emma?
Down the bottom.
I can't find that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Anglian Water. Okay. Page 14, bottom paragraph, but 2. Yep, lovely. Page 15. Lovely. So we'll sign those off as accurate. Thank you very much. And do we have any declarations of interest for today? Nope. Do we have any items of urgent business, Emma? No. Do we have any petitions from members of the public? No. Do we have any matters referred to the committee by a member? No. Okay. Responses of the council or the cabinet to the committee's reports or recommendations. I don't think there were any. The last?
No.
Okay, lovely. So now we move on to item 10, which is the delegated decisions from March to May. And this is to receive a note. Does anyone have any questions about that item? No, is everyone happy to take that? And note them, yes? Any questions? No? Okay, is that sufficient then, Emma? So we've noted it, yep. Okay, thank you very much. So now we get on to the Anglia Water briefing, which was the requested update on sewage outflows in the district, and we've submitted you questions. So I think you wanted to give a little presentation, is that correct as well? And then answer questions. I think we had a few additional ones to the ones that we sent you. Is that okay? Do you want to both come forward and introduce yourselves and then? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee, for inviting us today. So introductions first. I'm Grant Tufts. I'm the Regional Engagement Manager in our Public Affairs team, Anglia Water, and my role is to liaise with local authorities, politicians and other agencies across the region to explain what Anglia does and also listen to concerns and take back any issues and get answers for yourselves as council members. I'll hand over to Angus to introduce himself.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Angus Outram from Anglia Water. I'm the EDM Regulation Manager, so I'm responsible for event duration monitoring returns to the Environment Agency. Also involved quite heavily in our expenditure for the years, looking at our various programs to reduce storm overflows and assurance on all of our external audits.
Thanks, Angus. Yeah, so as Chair said, we've got a few slides. Just I know there's quite a few new members of the committee, so we have been regular attendees at this committee. So I thought we'd start with a bit of a refresh about what a storm overflow actually is, in case you didn't know. So these are a result of combined systems becoming overloaded during high rainfall. So basically, these are old infrastructure that's been in place for decades, even hundreds of years. They take both sewage and rainfall from rainfall events into a combined system, and the storm overflows take the pressure off that system to prevent that excess sewage backing up into people's houses or properties or businesses, and protect them from flooding. So they're like a relief valve, really, a bit like your overflow pipe on your bath at home. All the overflows are permitted by the Environment Agency, and Angus is our key contact for that. We'll go on to that later. Because the majority of what comes out of them is actually rainfall. They're only supposed to operate when there's heavy rainfall to relieve the system. As I said, they were built decades, even centuries ago, and these days it's not the way that infrastructure is constructed for sewage and water management. We now have separate foul and surface water systems built on new developments. Has been the case for 30 plus years. As I said, all of our overflows, and we've got about 1,500 of them, are monitored with what's called an event duration monitor, which Angus will talk about soon. And they measure the frequency and the duration of those spill events. And that's published in a near real-time live map available on our website. And behind that, there's a plan of action to combat and reduce the amount of spills on each one of those over the next sort of regulatory cycles that the water industry operate in. Go to the next slide, please. So how do we monitor them? Well, as I said, they're all have these EDM, event duration monitors on them. As I said, there's 1,400 of those, and there's a picture of some of what they look like. And we've got 100% coverage. So we were one of the first water companies back in the end of 2023 to have monitors on all of our EDMs, our CSOs, combined storm overflows. And then since then, the government have issued a storm overflow reduction plan that all water companies are signed up to. And every one of those monitors has a plan of action to reduce the spill frequency, obviously working on those that spill the most, and to try and remove those from the network and find alternative ways of dealing with that water. It's not easy. It's basically replumbing some towns and cities and villages, which is very expensive. And so we're looking at various options to try and make that as easy as we can and balance that cost with customer bills and etc. So we'll go through some of the details of those in your patch later on. That's one of the questions I think the chair put forward to us, but we'll explain a bit more of that later on. Next slide, please. So as I say, we are investing a lot of money, and the storm overflow reduction action plan from DEFRA is a detailed plan for every overflow we've got. So that the plan is that none of them should be discharging more than 10 times a year on average by 2050. That might seem a long time away, but Yeah, as I say, these are quite complex and expensive sometimes projects to run. We've put a lot of money in our current business plan, over £1 billion in our business plan for the next 5 years to address some of these most high spillers first. And the total spend on environmental improvement has doubled to 4 billion in this period as well. So it shows our focus on nature-based solutions and things like wetlands and sustainable drainage, because we know the impact of surface water, particularly getting into our network and threatening properties, is increasing with climate change. So we are reacting to that. And by 2030, we're going to be reducing our total pollutions by 41%, with no serious pollutions, we hope, in that period too. You might have seen recently, our shareholders have also recently injected another £100 million to fast track some of these improvements. That funding will focus on preventing blockages, which is another problem that causes pollutions and flooding, improving the assets we already have, so improved monitoring, and also increasing the capacity, so things like storm tanks and what's called full flow to treatment, where we treat all the water on our recycling sites, and also recruitment. We're recruiting lots more technicians to get out in the field and monitor and prevent things from happening before they do. So there's a real commitment from Anglian Water to improve the situation on storm overflows. Sorry, next slide, please. And the map I mentioned, there's a national storm overflow map available as well as our own one. It's all available here. We'll send you the details and the links afterwards in the written updates. But all this data is transparent, and everything that we publish to the EA is also available to the general public. And you can drill right down to individual storm overflows and see what spills they've had and how long for, and then against that, what the plan is to improve that site over time. So it's a really open and honest, transparent process we've got there. And then the next slide, I'll hand over to Angus.
Thank you, Grant. Thought we'd include some of our spill numbers, obviously looking through 22 up to date, so January to May this year. Bit around 2024, obviously the larger increase in spill numbers was predominantly due to the exceedingly heavy rain we had January through to February into March. That saw and made up almost 80% of our spills for the entire year. Since January 2025 to May this year, we have had currently 48 total spills with a total duration of 251 hours. Looking in at around about 1.71 spills per overflow with an average duration of about 8.37 hours. Next slide, please.
Since they've got 30 in.
Yes, and we have 30 in the local district. This slide helps to explain via the medium of a fairly busy graph, but it does explain and helps show some of the rainfall effects that we see on spill numbers. So if you see some of the increased numbers, I was saying in February 2024 there, our rainfall is obviously, our spills have tracked our rainfall. You'll see the various bars as they get slightly higher, that shows the increased rainfall. And in most cases, our spills will track that. Next slide, please. A piece around our storm overflow planned improvements for the 2025-2030 AMP. So at Bristol, we have a spill reduction scheme, increased treatment capacity to reduce the spill frequency down to less than 10 spills per year by March 2030. At Aldborough, we have a new storm tank. Fakenham, we have another spill reduction scheme with some sustainable drainage schemes, surface water management plan, and this will help also reduce the frequency down to less than 10 spills. Fakenham Norwich Road, overflow reduction scheme to reduce the spill frequency down to less than 10 by March 2030. Given near Mill, we've got another spill reduction scheme to reduce the bathing water spills to less than 2 by 2027. It's also linked to the Mundersley scheme. And a bit about Mundersley, our spill reduction scheme to reduce the spill frequency down to less than 2. And that's the assets affecting the Mundersley bathing water. Horning Knackers Wood, we've got another spill reduction scheme, looking to introduce a wetland storage, stormwater storage scheme there to reduce our spill frequency down to less than 10. Wells Freeman Street, another overflow reduction scheme to have no adverse ecological impact by March 2030. And Wells Freeman WRC, obviously another spill reduction scheme, and again, no adverse ecological impact.
Thanks, Angus. So yeah, so there's sort of examples of the action against 9 or 10 of the highest spillers in your district that were on that plan. So obviously there are others as well with longer term plans that will be on the map. But I thought I'd give you a bit more of a broader overview of the investment in districts as well in the next 5 years. So that was one of the questions we'll get onto later, but we can sort of cover it now as well. So around North Norfolk, there's around £103 million been planned to spend in the next 5 years. In addition to the storm overflow improvements we set out, there's also things like environmental improvements around phosphorus. So we're reducing additional phosphorus removal from 11 of our water recycling centres, so sewage works we used to call them. There's also a Fateland scheme which should be completed this September. So phosphorus is obviously a chemical that's put in, gets into water systems from a variety of reasons, from agriculture, from washing powders, that sort of thing. And the Environment Agency are tightening the limits on what is acceptable to be discharged through final effluent. So big investment to reduce those figures down to very, very minor percentages. Similarly on ammonia, there's a couple of schemes as well to reduce ammonia from a couple of sites. And also you might have heard we're progressing the planning for a desalination plant on Bacton, which is just down the coast. So that's a longer term water resources project, which we appreciate. It's not just about flooding and CSOs, as providing water is one of our major roles as well. So there's that coming in this 5 years too. And also first time sewerage schemes. So many villages, not just in Norfolk, but more broadly, still are not on main sewerage. Historically they have septic tanks and soakaways and the like. But again, where villages apply to, or the EA mandate it, we have to provide opportunities for villages to connect to the main sewerage system. So we've got 6 schemes coming in the next 5 years at Antingham, Barton Turf, Hamworth, Bethingham, Haysborough and Ludham. So there'll be the schemes being delivered in the next 5 years. And also schemes at 3 water treatment sites to recycle as much water on site to reduce the obstruction water we need. So rather than use water to clean our processes, we use existing water on our site to sort of self-process it. So that's another water efficiency measure. And while I'm here, the last slide is a bit of a shout out for our campaign called Just Bin It. Pollutions and flooding can be caused by blockages as much as they can by hydraulic overload or other factors. And we're finding that 35,000 blockages a year on the network is becoming quite a problem. And most of those are caused by wet wipes and unflushable material being flushed down loos or pushed down sinks. So you might have seen some adverts about Just Bin It and the logo on the right, the graphics there. We are pushing it really hard. We've got some hotspots where we're doing some not enforcement, but some sort of close liaison with customers to encourage them to not use wet wipes. We've found with a bit of encouragement and liaison and communication, people can change their habits quite readily. We don't want to ban wet wipes; they provide a valuable service, but we are lobbying hard to ban the plastic that's in wet wipes. As if any of you want to come and see one of our water recycling centres and the skip at the end of the process that collects all this stuff, you'll see how awful it is. It never doesn't biodegrade, and that has to go to landfill. So I know it's early, but the three P's, poo, paper, and P, they're the three P's we want flushed down loos, and bin everything else that you use in the bathroom. Equally with oil and grease from cooking, cool that and put it in the bin, or we could use it as a bird feed. So I think we'll probably share some information with the council to possibly share that out to communities, because as I say, it is a hot topic for us, and it shows that we've all got a part to play to look after the water cycle and the environment. So that's a little shout out for Just Bin It today. Thank you for that opportunity. So that's the end of the slides. I'm going to hand back to Chair and go through the questions and we can work through those. Yeah.
Angus, were you going to speak separately, or are you just going to answer questions? Okay. So looking at the questions that we sent you, we had the general question from Councillor Toy about your plans for further improvement and the investment in North Norfolk. I guess you've covered that quite comprehensively, but the percentage of investment, is that possible to quantify what that might be in North Norfolk?
Yeah, I mean, percentages are very difficult to quantify. They depend on so many factors. We've got an £11 billion programme the next 5 years, half of which is operational costs, and half of which is capital expenditure and improvements. So obviously £103 million coming to Norfolk might not sound a lot, but it actually is, considering the population, the geography, and the state of our current assets and infrastructure in that region, in this part of the region. There are other parts of the region that need more and others that need less. So I think a percentage is probably a bit misleading, but yeah, and obviously all of our investment is done on a priority basis. We're highly regulated, as you can imagine, in the water industry, and we have to spend customers' money, your money, wisely and proportionally to where the needs are most. So we focus that on where the biggest improvements can be held, where the challenges are most felt. So things like the high spilling storm overflows is a good example. That gets more money more quickly, or where we try to avoid pollutions, where we try and keep maintaining flows for customers and we don't run out of water. So they're the sort of projects that we have to focus on. We can't, obviously we haven't got a bottomless pit of money. Bills have gone up this year and next year, but obviously we've got to balance that bill income against our expenditure. So I think Norfolk, it's a substantial amount of money, £103 million, and as I say, we've gone through some of those projects that we're spending it on. Yeah.
Does anyone have any more specific questions? Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, you talk about our region. So can you explain actually how large our region actually is? Where does it cover? And in addition to that, how do you prioritise for North Norfolk what schemes you actually work on?
So you mean our region, Anglian Waters region?
Been referring to our region.
Yeah,
So I
well,
don't know
yeah.
how big our region actually is in terms of, so you say you're spending £11 billion. So for our region, so what does that?
Yeah, so our region is the biggest water company by geography in the UK. So our region stretches from the South Humber Bank, right up at North Lincolnshire, right down to East London, effect, right down to Tilbury and on the Thames, and then all the way across to bits of Oxfordshire. So we've got the biggest land area of all to serve. About 6 million customers. Thames have got more customers than us, but we have 6 million customers across very flat and challenging landscape. So we've got very different challenges as a water company than others have. Low flowing rivers, water resources challenges in terms of boreholes and rivers, obviously a coastline as well. So all of those need investment, need looking after. So the prioritisation basis is based on a environmental need mainly. Most of our investment is of environmental protection. So, and it's mandated by DEFRA, or by the Environment Agency. So we have to spend a lot of that money on things that they tell us to. And including the reduced permits on discharges, as I mentioned earlier. So some of that money is mandated spend to make sure that our compliance is in line with the EA regulations to how much phosphorus we can include in our final effluent, for instance. And equally, we've got a license to provide water, so we have to make sure we have enough water supply. So we have to invest a lot of money on that. So you might have heard us talk about 2 new reservoirs in Anglian Waters region. One in the Fens and one in South Lincolnshire. There's also our strategic pipeline, a 500-kilometre pipeline from bringing water from North Lincolnshire right down through Lincolnshire into Cambridgeshire, skirting a bit of Norfolk down through Suffolk and ending in Essex. That's going to be due to complete in 18 months' time. And other big projects like desalination I've mentioned, one at Bacton. Also, we're looking at one at Mablethorpe in Lincolnshire. So these are massive infrastructure projects that are hundreds of millions of pounds. But obviously, we've also got to make sure that we provide the local investment too. So I think prioritisation based on those factors dictates a lot of where we spend the money. But we do have maintenance budgets within that funding pot to react and spend locally where we need to, based on need and priority, mainly around environmental protection and provision of water.
So Houston?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can we just come back to North Norfolk? Am I right in saying it was 103 million over 5 years? So of the 21 million effectively each year, I know we're partly into one of those years, the desalination at Bacton is going to take a considerable amount of money, research and development and actually production, is it not? Surely that's going to sort of diminish those figures quite substantially, particularly with the other work that you've just mentioned.
Yep, I don't know what the actual figure is for the desal plant. We can find that out. I mean, I think, it's not massive. It's obviously a long burn project. we're not going to be building it anytime soon. It's lots of research and planning costs and that sort of thing. So, but I can give you the breakdown in our written updates afterwards. Yeah.
Oh, so does that research and development come out of the 21 million, or is there a
Yeah.
separate
No, it's all part of the same pot. Yeah.
same part?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We've got a lot of development going on over the next 20 years, most of it in the next 10, particularly in Fakenham, Cromer, North Walsham. How closely do your investment plans take account of the significant population growth in those towns? Thank you.
Good question. So, yeah, securing and maintaining water for the region is one of our biggest challenges. We are the driest part of the country. We've got the lowest rainfall, also fastest growing, as you said, and obviously the recent uplift, shall we say, in housing demands from central government is across the board. So our business plan we submitted for at least 5 years did not factor in the additional housing that the government mandated on local authorities. It came too late. So we're trying to play catch up with that to try and make sure that we have enough water to provide infrastructure for those properties. We reckon in the next 20 years, going to be 700,000 new residents in East Anglia. But we do work with local authorities and we do plan ahead, and we have a long-term water resources management plan, which is a 25-year rolling plan to make sure we do have those assets and that infrastructure in place. And I've mentioned the reservoirs and the pipelines already to cope with that in the medium to long term. And we've also invested since 2020 over £1 billion on that supply resilience, building smaller pipe connections and looking at abstraction licenses from the EA to make sure we've got enough water for people. But it is tough, absolutely. So we're having to work with local planning authorities to look at a phased growth plan. So properties are built at the same time as we can provide water for them. We've also got a really good customer base that use a lot less water in East Anglia than the rest of the country. And we've got a great smart metering program, which encourages people to be mindful of what they use. And obviously you pay for what you use on a meter. On a smart meter, it tells you even more accurately how much you're using. So you've got more of a information to reduce your consumption. So we encourage people to use water wisely, which is, and again, which is why we've not had a hosepipe ban in East Anglia for 20 plus years when other parts of the country have. And considering my points I raised earlier about how hot and dry we are, that's testament really to our customers being really mindful of that, and also us spending lots of money on fixing leaks and finding leaks and repairing our own networks. So yeah, so we do plan ahead, but obviously if the housing numbers change around us through government initiatives or campaigns, then we have to sort of try and play catch up, and that isn't always as quick as we can. We're aware of your local plan, which makes provision of up to 10,000 new homes by 2026. And also we're trying to encourage a lower water efficiency standard for new properties. So obviously new houses should have lower average per capita consumption to encourage, again, low water use for those new properties. And we're reviewing that forecast ready for our next 5-year plan as well. And the smart metering rollout across North Norfolk, which I spoke to big members before about, will encourage more people to be more mindful of what they use to reduce their consumption. And we're also working with the Environment Agency on the abstraction licenses, because obviously they're trying to protect the environment, quite rightly, but we're having to sort of balance that by saying, well, if you don't allow us to take more water when we need to, then obviously we need to find other sources. So again, we're working up a plan with the Environment Agency, and again, the longer term plan is the Bacton desal plant, which will provide 25 million litres a day by 2040. And again, the plans it. So yeah, so in short, we do work with local planning authorities on the growth plan, but ultimately, we have to be really careful how we balance that supply and demand.
So basically you're saying we'd have to hope for the best that you can provide when all these houses are built.
Well, yeah, because the numbers have changed since our plan was submitted to our regulator. So when if your X number was in your plan, and then we're geared up and resourced and financed to deliver that growth, that then changed after our plan was submitted to our regulator. Will we need to play catch up and work with planning authorities and local authorities to have a phased approach for growth. It's not just actually water provision; it's also treating wastewater. I think in North Norfolk you're okay on that front, but other parts of the region, growth is stifled because of the fact that we can't take the flows to treat wastewater. There isn't capacity in some of our sites, again under permit from the Environment Agency, but I don't think that is much of an issue in North Norfolk, thankfully. But these are the parameters we have to work with when governments change or move the goalposts in effect and increase housing need. So.
Does that answer your question? Because I know you had a more detailed question about North Walsham.
I
a
can
bit later.
bring that up now if you wish, Chair.
No, I think so.
Yeah, since it follows on from the same theme, I did look particularly at North Walsham. I'm a member for North Walsham, and there's two aspects to it. The water supply comes from boreholes which are pumped up into two water towers built in the early 1950s. Now, the population of the town then was just over 5,300. Population currently is over 14,000. It's projected to rise to something just over 20,000 within the next 15 years. Water supply is a bit intermittent. The infrastructure in the streets is constantly leaking. Where is the investment in additional water supply that is going to meet the demands of particularly of the new North Walsham Western Sustainable Development? Secondly is, we're constantly told that the sewage treatment works at Marshgate will quite adequately cope with every new development that's going on. Again, where is the investment in ensuring that a town that is going to increase its population by a third, that there is an additional 1/3 capacity in those works? And what's the impact then on Gimmingham and potential for pollution on Munsley Beach? These are all serious issues of concern. A colleague of mine has worked out in some detail the what likely new required water consumption. I'm sure you've got the same figures somewhere or something very similar. And it's quite frightening. When I was a lad, when I lived up there, those water towers, somebody came in the morning, fired up a couple of diesel pumps, filled them up, went away for the rest of the day, filled them up again in the evening. I gather the electric pumps are running constantly, and they're just about keeping pace now. How will they keep pace in future? Thank you.
I think I just referred to my previous answer really. I mean, we have to by license provide water for new houses. What we're trying to do is make sure that the houses that come on growth at the same time as we can provide that water. So we are, water will be available for those new customers, and we will invest where we need to make sure those water towers can cope and provide those flows. And we've got technology and pressure monitoring and all sorts of other clever people than me that manage those networks to make sure that we do keep those taps flowing. But equally, as I said before, we're pushing people to use less and be mindful of what they do. The leakage point, I think, is fair. I think we encourage people to report leaks as soon as if it's anything, let us know, and we'll get out there as soon as we can. We know how crucial it is to fix those. But again, we are I think the lowest leakage company in the UK. We've invested millions over the years on finding and fixing leaks, and we continue to do so. Water is a precious resource, so I think we are trying to keep pace with that growth, but it is a balancing act between demand and supply. But ultimately, we have to provide that water for those people. In terms of Marshgate, there is currently substantial on-site capacity to store stormwater at that site. And we've implemented an investment program to automate the return of stormwater at the head of that plant, so it protects it even further, and that maintains levels as low as possible, which reduces the need for operator intervention at that site, and that will help minimise overflow discharges and through the system, as you say, onto Munsley. The spill data for Marshgate is very low. I think it's less than 2 spills last year, so that shows that intervention has worked. And the issues we did have at Munsley were not related to that. That was a mechanical breakdown, I think, last summer, which I spoke to Councillor Fredericks about. And fingers crossed, Munsley's in a much better space now, and obviously that's reflected in the excellent beach blue flag this year. I've also carried out some on-site flow monitoring on Marshgate, and that work's been completed 3 years ahead of schedule. But at the moment, we don't need any more. We don't need any more investment on that site. It's operating as efficient as it can. But obviously, we keep everything under review, and we'll monitor that going forward. But it's all okay at the moment.
Thank you. It's good to know that at least the Marshgate plant is being dealt with. Would, I think, as of other North Walsham members, several here today, appreciate it if you were able to indicate to the council at some point in the next 3 to 4 months as to what you propose to do to ensure adequate water supply, given the concerns over the capacity of those towers and those boreholes. Thank you.
I mean, could that be a presentation to the town council, for example? Grant, do you think? You know, if it's more detailed information, perhaps. we need to
Yeah,
know.
if it would help, that we'll
You know, I
always
don't
come
know
and
whether
talk to
you
anybody.
guys are
Yeah,
interested.
yeah.
You have been very helpful at the parish level. That's what I'm trying to say. So if anyone has any problems, Anglia Water will always come and talk to you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
To the more general questions then. We had a question on the direction of travel with the statistics. Councillor Boyle, were you happy with the graph that was shown?
Yes, there wasn't obviously enough time to analyse it, so it would be really good to see that. Off the top of my head, looking at it, it was very difficult to come to a great conclusion because it was with the time it was up there. My concern was when there were the major spills. I mean, if you looked at the last 2 years, it looked amazing. You know, there were 500 and something the year before, and this year there's hardly any. But then we've had hardly any rain, so it was quite difficult for me, as a scientist, to make a good comparison to see your direction of travel from the information.
No, that's. I mean, so yeah, I mentioned to the chair before the meeting that we'll send you. I've got it here, so it's a bit difficult to put on the slide, but basically a breakdown of the last sort of 3 years of data for every one of your overflows in North Norfolk, which there are about 30, as Angus said. So we'll give you that. I'll provide that in written update afterwards, and you can see the direction of travel, as you said. And obviously that does correlate a lot with what Angus showed in terms of the rainfall. There's absolute correlation between high rainfall and spills, which indicates obviously that rainwater is getting into the network, and that means that we have to surcharge more often than not. Where we have spills when there's dry weather, that's obviously something that we need to look at and address and investigate. And that's where things have gone wrong, either through blockages or mechanical breakdown or other issues. And obviously we don't want that to happen at all. So if they occur, then we're absolutely on top of that, and that's investigated by the EA and all sorts. So, but yeah, we'll give you the data in a tabular format afterwards.
Thank you. That would be really useful. As I say, thank you for the presentation, but it doesn't totally. Yeah, it's just you give me the highlights, but it's the nitty gritty. I think we'd all be interested in. So yes, thank you for that.
Just on that, so all of that data is available, as I said, but obviously what you don't know is probably which one of the thousands of EDM monitors on that database online are North Norfolk's. So what we'll do, we'll extract the North Norfolk ones for you, and then you can then see yourselves what they are and where they are. Yeah,
absolutely, because we don't, you know, much as the information's there, we don't all have the time and the resources to look at it. So yes, that would be extremely helpful. Thank you.
Just to add to that as well, we knew for this year and future years, we've also added the line by line spill breakdown data to our website. So it's not just the annual return with the cumulative figures, it's also the deep down line by line spill data. So if you need to or would like to, it is all available to you see.
Thank you. I think it does help people that like to know what's going on, particularly in the sea with the swimmers and one thing and another. They monitor things very, very closely. Having spoken to them, they do have their concerns, and they will check before they go swimming. So I do understand that it's there, but a simple extraction and presentation to us would be very useful. So when people ask us the question, we don't have to sift all of the data. It's there for us. Thank you.
Lovely. So I think that covers the question the more detailed question, because that's the data you're going to present to us, which we'll be very much looking forward to seeing. So then we go on to protection of chalk streams, which I don't think you specifically mentioned in your presentation. And Councillor Fletcher had a question about the protection of chalk streams in general. And I've got, you're interested in the River Bure, I'm interested in the Glaven and the Stiffkey, and Councillor Cushings is interested in the Wentham, and I don't know if there are any others here, but you had specified that your priority was chalk stream, so I think you didn't quite mention how much of your business plan investment was going to that. But Councillor Fletcher, did you have any more to say?
Yes, I mean, the specific wording of my question is on the paper that you've got, but it's really a ramification of the issue to deal with increased development, which is my own area is Bristol, but this impacts on obviously everywhere. And we've just heard about North Walsham, but in Bristol we do have the headwaters of the River Bure, which is a chalk stream, and there is a development which is mooted provisionally in tune with the extension of the local plan, which will certainly have an impact on that. And this is an incredibly fragile ecosystem as it is for the other chalk streams in the area. And just wondered what measures you have already or that you anticipate needing to protect these very valuable and almost unique, at least to Britain, resources.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So yeah, as I touched on earlier, the reaction to that growth and the tighter environmental standards that are being put on water companies is mandated in our what's called WINEP, the Water Industry Environmental Investment Programme, where we spend money on improving environmental interactions that we have, and that includes, let's say, 11 phosphorus removal schemes, one of which actually is at Bristol in the next five years. And that also includes Langham, Corpus Christi, Stalham, Aldborough, Gresham, Broughton, Bristol, Hindleston, Sculthorpe, Stibbard Moors and Ludham, also at Fakenham. So those are schemes specifically to remove phosphorus to protect those chalk streams. And obviously there's also the additional ammonia processes I mentioned, Bristol, Fakenham, Southropes and Stalham. So these are purposeful interventions to maintain or improve the effluent discharges into those watercourses, which obviously some of which are chalk streams, as we know how precious they are. Yeah, we do appreciate, understand what an asset they are to the region, and we do follow that guidance from our environment regulator to make sure that our discharges are not harming those streams in future. And there's also the abstraction points. We don't want to be over abstracting from those either. So we're going to try and find points of abstraction which we don't, which limits the flow to some of those as well. So it's another part of the work we're doing is to make sure we don't they don't dry up as well as much as what effluent we put into them. Obviously, a lot of them obviously depend on that effluent to keep flowing. So again, the higher the quality of what we put back into the river means that river can flow. People forget that, I think, quite often, that we're part of the water cycle. We're taking water out of the river to treat it, to clean it, to serve it for drinking, and take away the wastewater and clean it and put it back into that river elsewhere. So keeping those flows going is all part of our responsibility as a water company too. So yeah, so a commitment on those 11 locations that will help maintain and protect those chalk strips. And over the next 5 years, those schemes will be delivered. I think some of the figures, because the phosphorus amounts in final effluent are coming down a lot. Point whatever 1 parts per million. Really, it's called like a technical achievable limit. You can't get any lower than that, and that's how serious I think it's being taken. So we are doing all we can to protect those streams.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Fletcher?
Well, yes. I mean, I think it again connects with the question that's been asked about North Walsham. To what extent does this accommodate a notional increase in building in these particular areas? How much is it just sort of based on current water usage, current depletion, and that sort of thing? Because inevitably a considerable increase in population is envisaged.
Yeah, so our assets will be scaled to deal with the increased demand and wastewater that comes from those sites. Obviously, new sites, as I said before, have separate systems for foul and surface water. And the foul that comes to our network has to be of a certain quality that we treat it before we put it back in the environment. So yeah, it's highly regulated. So we can't not meet those limits. Otherwise, we'll be prosecuted. In terms of demand, as I said, those asset interventions, that investment I mentioned before, will be coming on stream to provide security for supply and resilience over the next 5 years as fast as those houses are built. But obviously, yeah, with the increased pace of development, it might be quite difficult. But we'll work with local planning teams to ensure that we keep up where we can, and obviously working with others like the Environment Agency on abstraction and things like winter storage was potential as well for flooding. And looking at abstraction rates as well. Can we amend abstraction rates so we can take more in the winter than we do in the summer? For instance, that's something that isn't really possible at the moment in current legislation. But again, we're talking to the Environment Agency about that option as well. So we're doing all we can to make sure there's enough water and there's enough capacity to treat wastewater from the growth predicted.
And I think in your written answer, you'll provide more detail about which plants are being upgraded and in which fashion, which I think will be quite helpful for us with specific questions. Is that okay, Councillor Fletcher? Yeah. Councillor Cushing?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, while we're on the River Wensum, I'm a Fakenham member, so just like to, looking at sort of recent report, Fakenham's got 2 sewage treatment works, and in 2024, storm overflows discharged for 847 hours on 52 occasions. Now, understood that both of those sewage treatment works have storm overflow tanks, so a little bit of a loss to why we had such a major overflow into River Wensum, which obviously is a very delicate nature river, as Councillor Fletcher has explained. Now, the report said operational investigations are ongoing, so please can you shed some light on that and give any confidence that the situation in Fakenham will improve in the coming years?
I haven't got information on the flow rates at Fakenham, unfortunately, but we have obviously, I mentioned earlier about the accelerated infrastructure development project at Fakenham to remove more phosphorus. So the water quality issues at Fakenham are being addressed quickly. But I'll have to take away the flow rates and investigate and we'll work out, but we'll provide data on specific investment. And Angus and I will review the plan for Fakenham. You're right. I mean, storm tanks there to capture that storm water and treat it before we return. I'm not sure of the reason why that increase to discharges happened, but we'll report back.
Right. I mean, as Councillor Heinrich mentioned, Fakenham is one of the urban extension areas. 950 houses additional houses going to be built there over the next 10 years. So that gives even greater cause for concern regards to the River Wensum. And so that would be appreciated.
Thank you very much. Is that, I think if you give us more detail, that's sufficient on the chalk streams. Is everyone happy with that? And Councillor Netherway, you had a question about Birmingham specifically?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I appreciate that. My question in some ways is following on from my colleague, Councillor Heinrich, regarding a particular scenario. He's talking about North Walsham. I'm talking about a little village in the middle of nowhere that probably no one's never heard of. The problem is this council is being asked to build a lot of houses. The small village policy is dictating the minimum number of houses or the recommended number of houses. Fakenham does not have, not me, Fakenham doesn't have a main sewage, but has been promised it in, I quote, the near future. The reason it's an issue for me is because they have a treatment centre which is overflowing constantly. For the last few months, you guys have been tankering it on a daily basis. It's unfortunately located behind properties directly and right next to the local allotments, which is not great from a health perspective. So my question to you is, I've heard everything that you've said, and it's great that you've nominated 6 small new sewage installations, one of which is Ansingham, which is just across the road. But I'm very keen to know whether or not we could actually go ahead with looking at adding another 50 houses in a small village. Because at this point in time, the treatment centre that's being used can't cope with what's there already.
Okay, yeah, so on the first time sewerage scheme, so they're not Anglian water driven schemes. So if a village wants to have main sewerage, they apply to the Environment Agency and then Anglian Water for that to happen. Or the Environment Agency mandate it through environmental law, law. In fact, if there's too much pollution, they'll make sure they'll put that forward as a scheme. So in effect, villages have to sort of come together or as a community and request that they have a main sewer project put forward. And all of those for the next 5 years have been agreed. They go back years that go through the application process. So if Felmingham was to apply today, it would be at least 5 years until that was considered for main sewerage. So that's how long it takes. So yeah, it's up to the village itself to request to go on to main sewerage and run it that way. So in terms of the tankering, absolutely, you're right, and we obviously apologise for that, but we are tankering daily at Felmingham. Due to the existing soakaway system on that site being hydraulically overloaded, which is the high water table and flooding that's left behind. Over the years, our additional surface water connections have got worse, and more flows entering the system, resulting in that high level infiltration, which the original infrastructure was not designed to manage. So, being no longer able to cope with those peak flows, we are tankering to prevent that fluid overflows and also properties from flooding and allotments from flooding and people losing their toilets. So that is unfortunately a necessity to keep things working as they should. So we are aware of the pressures on that system. We are looking at longer term solutions at Felmingham. One of them is to address that capacity constraint by constructing a new soakaway within our existing site boundaries. So we're looking into doing that. We have to do percolation tests on site and that's happening in the next few weeks actually. So I've been told to look at the soil makeup and the geology to make sure that there's adequate capacity on that site to take that additional soak away. We're also looking at other options, including like a pump away arrangement, which basically is taking away that effluent to another location or change on the discharge point. So all of that is under review by our asset planning team. And a solution will be put forward in the coming months, and obviously we'll share that with the community when we get to a decision. But absolutely, we take on board that tankering isn't a solution, but it's a necessity at the moment while we come up with a longer term plan. So yeah.
Does that answer your question, Councillor, in the other way?
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate at least being told why it's happening, because I've never actually got to the bottom of why it's happening. The local guys have a real issue. Across the road, there's a building it's called the Old Rectory. Used to be old people's homes. They've just put in an appeal against the decision from NNDC, which means we're going to end up with 40 odd location flats there. There are already 3 housing applications going through and a corner location, which is going to be around 40 properties. They're going to happen certainly within your 5-year plan time. So may I ask you for some advice as to what I should tell the people in the village, what's going to happen with their sewage system?
So did you say that have they got main sewage already in that location?
No. They have a single treatment centre.
Right. Well, then that isn't anything to do with Anglian Water. Then that's a private setup. So
Well, it's Anglian Water tankering it.
From where?
How do you mean?
Oh, so if there's no main sewerage, do Anglian Water come and tanker away some storage tank?
Yep.
Right. So then that'll be the ongoing option until we get main sewerage in the village. We'll have to tanker that away unless they have another arrangement themselves. They can build their own package treatment plant, but basically it's like a private sewage works. Developers can do that if they want. But obviously, if they look into Anglian Water to take away that effluent, then we would have to tanker it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Bayes, did you have any specific questions about Stalham?
Well, mainly based on the one that I've already submitted, which is about, I think capacity always worries me, and I think it worries Stalham genuinely, because just going back to what's been said about capacity in terms of planning, I've never heard that Anglian Water has said there's no capacity. They've always accepted there's capacity. So we've always gone ahead with building, because that's one of the reasons that is asked of Anglian Water. My concerns are about the discharge of overflow from storms. And obviously landowners, I've just mentioned there about, have you been in consultation with any landowners in terms of how they can actually treat the effluents by reed beds, etc.? Because we do have a landowner who's in Stalham who's quite keen to do that, and yet that hasn't happened as such yet. So I just wondered whether there's other opportunities that are being missed at the moment in terms of working with landowners who might be able to facilitate and help you.
No, that's a very, very good question and very topical. Just on Stalham, before we get onto that, I've confirmation that there is headroom at Stalham to cope with the growth in the plan. So we're anything that's got planning consent is can happily go ahead. We'll have a capacity to treat flows from that site. In terms of nature-based solutions and reed beds, just not far from here is a place called Inglethorpe, which is one of Anglian Water's first ever wetland project. We're now rolling out dozens of more across the region. There's also one up at Langham, I think, in Norfolk as well. Reed beds and wetland treatment is an absolute way we're going to be doing things in the future. We're not, we're going to move away from the heavy carbon, steel, concrete constructions of treatment process. We're looking much more at nature-based solutions, and absolutely working with farmers and landowners to do that is imperative. Obviously, we need the land to do that, and often it goes at the end of a treatment process. So that we got a small works at Inglethorpe, and then the effluent that comes out of that then goes through a reed bed system and a wetland project system, which then polishes that water even more. So it's even cleaner going into the environment at the outfall. And again, we're doing more of those wetland projects across the region. So absolutely, that's the way we want to do things in the next 5 years and beyond. We can't do that without the help and cooperation with landowners and farmers. So we would, and equally on winter storage as well. That's another thing we're talking to farmers about. Farmers need water in the summer, and yet we have flooding in the winter. Why can't they retain that? And again, so working with the EA on projects to give farmers the ability to store floodwater. So yeah, very much singing the same tune there.
With that then, how do farmers who are keen to work with you, what is the process of going through? Contacting you? Or?
Yeah, we have a catchment team, so more like an agricultural farming landowner engagement team. Most of them are ex-farmers themselves, and Anglian Water, a dozen or so across the region. So we can put them in touch with our local catchment advisor, and also our nature-based solutions team, and we can come up with some ideas and some discussions around that. For sure, we can put you in touch with those.
There's only one other part of my question, which you talked about discharge, which is really important. I just wondered, with discharge, does the data and time of these discharges set against when rainfall actually happens? Because I'm only saying that because there are evidence that these storm overflows have taken place when rainfall hasn't occurred. So I wondered if you have data that shows date and time of these storm overflows usages or happenings that actually tie in with actually when rainfall has happened. So I'm aware, again, from evidence within my own area, that there have been times when we haven't had falls of a significant level. In fact, it's been dry, and yet those overflow tanks or storm overflows have actually been used.
So yeah, I'm happy to take that. Obviously, we have a large focus, as you said, looking at spills when rainfall hasn't happened. Recently, we've been engaging in a lot of projects to look at dry day spilling being a reason for a massive reason of concern for us. When we're looking at the data, we can look at our rainfall data. We've assimilated our rainfall data. We've got probably one of the most accurate rainfall programs available to any water company at the moment this year. We've fully utilised that. We're looking at these data sets at the moment. I think your sites in particular don't particularly spill very often. I think you've had no spills at all this year to date. Obviously, we look at that on a risk basis. We'll look at our sites and how they're performing. There is a methodology for which we look at dry day spills, and then we see when the rainfall has dropped off. We then look at our catchment investigation. So we will utilise a whole catchment investigation to see where we have potential. And I get Grant has said things about it, infiltration, customer misconnections, an awful lot of new properties are a really big thing for us, making sure that new estates that are being built, the easiest thing is to just pipe all the rainwater into the drains, causes us a huge problem. And it's a secondary huge problem about actually accessing those to see those, because sometimes we're prevented by the public who don't want us to go onto their sites. Misconnections are a huge thing. We have a team looking specifically at misconnections to help us within our focus catchments. So what we're doing now is we're reassessing all our data, running it back through our systems to see where we've got instances of spills happening when it hasn't rained. Most of those are attributed to problems on site. Some are contributed to infiltration, other issues, groundwater runoff. So we're looking at all sorts of ways which we can assess that. Soil moisture deficits, we're utilising satellite soil moisture deficits to look at our areas where we're holding an awful lot of water in the levels. So yeah, we are considering that very much at the moment and looking at where our sites are affected, how we're going to deal with that, and then forwarding that into our plans for the next AMP.
Is it also so to say that some catchments do take a while for rainfall to get through to the monitor? So it might have rained 3 days ago, the monitor might not go off until tomorrow. I mean, I'm not sure how true that is in Norfolk, but other catchments there, it takes a while. And also sometimes like snow melt is another one. It's a slower impact because snow melts and then it's suddenly days later you get the alert come through. So I think it does depend a lot on the hydrology and the catchment size.
Very much so. And what we have seen is our more rural areas are generally, they will drain away fairly quickly. It's our towns and built up areas that are really flashy. So you will see that instant activation from a rainfall to potential discharge. If that's happening, you'll see that happen. When you're getting, it depends on the soil makeups, but at the moment we're looking through those data sets and working very hard to nail those ones down. And then we'll push those into our programs.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I just wondered whether, regarding that, in terms of data time and discharge of overflows when there is dry spells, whether your investigation has identified what the reasons are for those happenings that logically don't make sense to people when there's quite a spell of dry weather, and yet those storm overflows are being used. So I just wondered whether there was a process of identifying the reason.
Yeah, so obviously all of our data, that we quality assure all of our data, our teams working line by line to look at every single spill that happens. What we do see an awful lot of is false alarms. So you see them caused by temperature constraints. If you've got a particularly warm day, that's quite an occurrence. Some of our monitors are quite affected by temperature. So if they're sitting out in the middle of a tank, really hot, blazing sunny day, there is the potential for that to send those into an alarm. They will blip in and out occasionally. We can see that. We will look at those instances and we can put preventative measures or utilise, in certain instances, different technology. So we're using a lot of radar technology now. So that's much less affected by temperature ranges, still partially, but much less. So we're looking at where we can reduce a lot of those false alarms and accurately, focus on that data, because it's one thing collecting the data, it's a second thing understanding it. So we collect on average about 1 billion lines of data a year. So we're looking through all of that to establish where our problem areas are. I've mentioned, potential dry day spills when things aren't happening. A large percentage of that is down to potential false alarms. The rest of it, we've got much improved program this year, and part of our investment is we've invested in staff. So we've now got new teams focused on spill reduction. So they will be focusing 100% on the data that we provide them to look at our problem areas. They will be visiting sites, so you'll see a lot more of our teams visiting areas of concern, visiting potential problem sites to carry out a full triage of what's been going on that site.
We've also got a question from Councillor Houston.
Yeah, thank you. What's the current legislative procedures and controls that you have on developers to reduce hard standing, which obviously in hard areas in developments, and also are there any sensible elements of legislation for rainwater harvesting?
First question, that's not our remit. Obviously, that's a planning decision or a building control measure or a developer. We're not responsible for surface water management, new developments. So hard standing and making sure you have porous material is something about building control, and developers need to do that through the planning process. As you might know, Anglian Water aren't statutory consultees for planning applications. So we have very limited say, although we are getting more and more vocal in that world, shall we say, because of the challenges we've talked about earlier. In terms of water, grey water and that sort of thing, again, you know, you might have seen recently, so Ed Miliband mentioned about putting solar panels on every new property. We would love for him to say, put water efficiency into every new property as well. But again, it's a developer-driven cost impact for house builders to consider. Under current legislation, we have to provide clean potable drinking water to every property, and that water is, you know, food grade product. So it's very, very strict regulations on water quality. There's no law or legislation in place to actually permit non-potable water to be provided to domestic properties. There is for commercial. So obviously we do provide a lot of non-potable, not drinking water to industry already. So yeah, it's one of those sort of catch-22 until legislation changes and house builders become more interested, or it becomes profitable, but dare I say it, them to do it, and it's appealing for new house buyers to look at that technology, and when they're buying a property, it won't change anytime soon, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it was a slightly unfair question because I knew the answer to the first one. I was hoping for a more positive reply from you, to be perfectly honest, because everything you've just talked about today basically starts to a greater degree on housing developments, because the speed of runoff is absolutely phenomenal, and you're being asked to control that. But
No, we're not being asked to control that.
No, well, you're not. You're having to control it
Well,
in one shape or form, aren't you?
Well, only if that water gets into our infrastructure.
Yes,
It shouldn't do, but
yeah.
that's a cause and effect. So we've got no influence on planning outcomes. as
No,
I'm
no,
saying.
but you should have, shouldn't you?
Oh,
Really?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we want.
That's the point I'm making.
Yeah. And the Norfolk MP George Freeman has got an inland flooding bill going forward, which we're helping with, and along with lots of other water companies. And part of that is to make water companies statutory consultees. There's this thing called automatic right to connect. So any developer connect to our infrastructure.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
We are, as I said, though, we are getting more firm with our responses and planning applications. So we're asking for things called a SPOC and SPOC, a sustainable point of connection. So where developers obviously have an automatic right to connect, we're saying, please connect here rather than here. Because if you connect here, you're going to cause flooding and runoff and issues and add to problems already there. If you connect here, there's less likely for that to happen. So we are encouraging planning authorities to put conditions on those development sites to make sure that the most sustainable connection is made. But ultimately, until that power is with us, we haven't got.
Okay, can I just finish off by asking? I know the structure of Anglian Water is about 13 companies, of which you're a block of 4, I think. Are the higher echelon companies, are they actually pressuring politicians? Because it is a critical factor, however you look at it.
Yeah. I mean, just on that point, our structure's being simplified. Our new chief exec came in last year, and he made a point of that. You might have seen him at the EFRA committee in the spring, sorry. So we're looking at restructuring that business to make it much more easier. But yeah, in fact, yeah, we are lobbying hard on that, as is the entire water industry. Having a more firmer voice in planning, will help. But obviously, the current government are there's a national planning framework review that's trying to maybe make planning even easier rather than harder. So it's one of those weird situations we find ourselves. Are they going to really want more statutory consultees to question planning applications when they're trying to open planning to get more houses built? Unfortunately, that does have consequences if it's not done properly, and we end up flooding and issues that we have to do. As you say, we have to deal with. That costs us all money and effort. We are very critical infrastructure. Yeah. So again, that's why we would look to North Norfolk, and we have a great relationship with Norfolk already, and our other local authorities to help us lobby on that point. And certainly our MPs are on our side too. So,
Councillor Hankins.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for a very interesting presentation to learn something about your future plans and what you're doing to improve water supply. My question is, what is the relationship with water companies, with Ofwat and the regulators? Are they merely scrutineers on what you're doing, or do they get involved in the early stages when you're putting your plan together?
Yeah, so you're quite right, and not to be unexpected, the water industry is a very heavy regulated industry. The two main regulators, Ofwat and the Environment Agency, and obviously the other one is the DWI, the Drinking Water Inspectorate, ensures that all we do is not just scrutinised, but literally line by line analysed and looked at. I mentioned before the example, the EA through DEFRA mandate most of our environmental spend, so they're things we have to spend your money on, environmental improvements through the WINEP schemes. And also there's a licensed operate we have as a water company, which means we have to provide water for domestic purposes. We have to do that under our license. But regulation is, it has been questioned more recently in the industry, as you might have seen. And so John Cunliffe has been appointed by the government to run the Cunliffe Review, which is a review of all the water regulations in the UK. And he just last week, you can look it up, he produced his initial findings report, and the full report's, I think, due out in July, which basically is a recommendation to government to overhaul the water industry regulations, and we're very much supportive of that. You've got an economic regulator, Ofwat, you've got an environmental regulator in the EA, you've got a water regulator in DWI, you've also got Smalley and Natural England and other regulators as well. So that it is due for an overhaul. Our business plans have to be approved by Ofwat, and if we don't agree with their outcome, we can challenge that. In fact, we are challenging our current plan to the Competition and Markets Authority, along with I think 3 or 4 other water companies. This 5-year cycle just about to start, and was started in April, for various reasons about the return on investment or the amount we can invest in projects that customers tell us to do. That's been done before and been successful or not successful, depending on which water company you work for. But yeah, it's a positive-ish relationship with the regulators. Obviously, they're there to do a job. You might have seen, EA are coming quite firm on fines and things. So you've seen some increased fines for water companies. That's in their remit. Obviously, they've also, government have just announced banning on bonuses for certain chief execs if those have got poor environmental performance, which does include Anglian Water, because we had a fortunate pollution last year. So yeah, they're getting more teeth, but whether it's the best model, we'll wait and see what Sir John Cunliffe thinks of his analysis.
So they are involved and at an early stage.
They are involved. Yeah, they
They're
very
looking at
much.
your plan and saying,
Yes.
just a minute, what about this additional housing and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, not on growth, not so much. I think that's again the growth point in terms of the current government's uplifting planning in the need for more houses has caught everyone by surprise. Shouldn't be surprised because every government does promise new houses when they get in power, but the scale of it is quite phenomenal. So I think it's not just water provision; it's all the other infrastructure that needs to be come alongside. You talk to anyone about dentists or schools or roads, or it's the same thing. So it's great to have targets, but you need to have the infrastructure. And as you said, water is critical to all of that. So yeah, we have to work with these regulators to actually be a bit more pragmatic about what actually can be delivered in the money we've got, with the bill increases we've got from our customers to pay, and make sure we spend that money as best we can and keep pace with that growth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm the planning portfolio holder, so I've been listening intently to your what you've said about planning in the district. To abate the storm overflow of planning measures that are coming your way in the current planning and infrastructure bill that's being debated in Parliament at the moment. We have had the foresight in North Norfolk to submit our numbers for our emerging local plan, which we expect to have adopted by the end of the year, prior to the last election. So in effect, that will mean that on planned delivery numbers for houses, we've probably alleviated the pressure on yourselves by about 40%, because our numbers that we're expected to build out are far lower than they would have been had we submitted our local plan after July last year. So I've got this image in my head at the minute of you getting into a boxing ring with the Deputy Prime Minister over the numbers that you can consent to in terms of connections on houses being built moving forward. And you did say that you want phased delivery. How do you envisage coping with the pressure from the government to build out at ever faster rates, new developments at ever faster rates to meet this 1.5 million target? How do you envisage coping with that? Are you going to be perceived as a similar block to development, which nutrient neutrality is presenting us here in North Norfolk, and is the main reason for why we haven't got a 5-year land supply? I'm just intrigued as to how realistic your plans are going to be, given the pressure that you're getting from Westminster.
So yeah, it's a good question, and we are very mindful of this. It's just across the region. It's not just obviously in North Norfolk where these uplifts have happened, and it's good to see that there is some wiggle room, hopefully, in North Norfolk, and we'll welcome that. But we are being challenged quite rightly on the pace of growth and our ability to keep pace with that. What we are finding and reporting back to local planning authorities is a lot of the land banking that's gone on, or the approved planning applications that sat there yet to be built. So things that have already been approved, we have got capacity to provide water and sewage for those properties. So it's getting those built before you start adding more on and building new developments. Get those that have already been approved, built and developed by those developers, and that obviously that keeps that turnover of new housing coming, while the asset growth that we need to provide to allow for the newer housing numbers can come on stream. So not far from Whitlingham in south of Norwich, big site there, big sludge treatment centre, water recycling centre. That's got tens of millions of pounds investment coming, and we're not able to accommodate growth there because of the uplift of numbers of south of Norwich and that catchment. So we're pushing back on the local planning authority in Norwich there to say you need to build what you've already got approved, and then because we have to provide supply for, asset performance for that, and then obviously we'll then fast track and speed up our delivery of those other assets as best we can. Ultimately, we've got a finite amount of money that you pay us as your bill payers. We have to spend that money across many mandated projects, as I mentioned before, that are stipulated by regulators on environmental improvements. The growth element, we have to really pick and choose where the best bang for our buck's going to be in terms of what houses will come on stream more quickly. And again, our planning development team are working with local plans across different local authorities on those discussions happening now. I think our spatial planning team has been in touch with your planning team already. I know, do you know Tess Saunders? So she's our spatial planning manager. So she'd have been reviewing your local plan, that we'll work with you to make sure we can get the assets as built as alongside the houses coming on stream. So I think you've got from 556 homes to 993 per year or something. I think is your emerging plan. So it's quite a big.
Yeah, we're much nearer 600 than we are 1,000.
Right.
We'd have been close to 1,000 if we'd have delayed submitting our local plan, but we've been quite smart.
Oh, that's good.
We've got smart planners. You've got smart water. We've got smart planning.
Good.
Can I just ask you about the reservoir situation?
Yes.
Is it a disappointment that we're not being allocated a plan to provide a reservoir in Norfolk and Suffolk, or do you see more desalination plants as the
I think the reservoir that we're building in Cambridgeshire, so in the Fens, so to sort of southeast of Peterborough, sort of near Chatteris around there. Now that's it's still going to be part of our major water network that will move water across the region, part of our grid, if you like. But desal is a better option for Norfolk because it's just too far away from other water sources, and it'll cost us a lot more money to build pipelines. So desal is an option we're looking at for that. And again, as I said, I'll get the investment we're doing in the next 5 years, but that will come on stream in the next sort of decade or so. And that will provide a lot of resilience and water for the east, as will more fluid abstraction with working with EA and obviously more local water resilience schemes by connecting networks and pipes up in Norfolk. So that's the strategic pipeline I mentioned that's been built from the Humber down to Essex, which we're due to finish in 2027. There's already another one being planned that's going to sort of go east to west and then branch off that. So that will make us more connected and provide you with that resilience and more water from other sources from the wetter parts of our region to the drier, which is also Norfolk, Suffolk, Essex, the drier parts of our region. Yep.
Councillor Fredericks?
Thank you. I thought I'd jump in on housing because you know that I'm a portfolio member for housing. I just wanted to say that Anglian Water are a consultee. When you look at your planning applications that come through to you, they're already consulted, so that you give your views on that and any mitigation that's needed. On new developments, particularly in rural parts of the county, it's particularly difficult following the Grenfell inquiry recommendation that water pressure needs to be such the fire agencies need to be putting fires out in housing, which sounds really sensible, absolutely sensible, and it's the right thing to do. However, this is causing a problem with rural development, because in rural situations, there isn't the water supply, there isn't the water pressure available. So housing associations are having to sink vast tanks, which are the size of a bus, into rural development schemes to fill up and aid with the process of potentially putting out a fire. And these tanks cost £100,000 each. So we have a development of 9 houses in a village, and it's a community interest land trust. So with the housing association having to find another £100,000 to facilitate this. I just wanted to highlight that to you, Grant, and perhaps we could work on that to see if there's any particular way that we could solve. No, we're not going to solve it, but if there's any particular way that we can work together to find some kind of solution or funding pack, because £100,000 is actually quite a lot of money to lose when you're trying to put on affordable homes for local people. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Fredericks. I think, we'll have a discussion about it, but there are, back to legislation, we're obliged to provide water pressure at a certain bar level for domestic consumption across the region. And obviously that's part of our license to operate, where if we fail to do that, we'll get fined, or there'll be a guaranteed service issue that customers will get paid compensation if we don't meet that standard. For emergency services, I think that's different. So I think we need to take that offline. I don't know what the rules are around that, where fire service needs to get into the network to access water mains through the hydrants in the street or whatever. So I will find out about that and get back to you. Yeah.
Grant, I had a question about water pressure for one of the villages. I think I asked you were going to get back to me. I don't know if anyone else has problems with low water pressure in their villages, but it's probably more of an issue than perhaps we thought.
Well, as I say, I mean, demand, hot weather, more people use more water and they draw more water more quickly. But as I say, we there are set limits and measures on what pressure should be. And obviously, if people are experiencing low pressure, they should absolutely ring us and let us know. We can check our network. As I said before, we optimize our network all the time, and up and down, lower and raise pressures according to demand. We've got fantastic monitoring and telemetry that tells us the pressures in our pipes. So if there is a low pressure issue, that could be a leak or a burst somewhere that maybe we're not aware of that's caused that pressure. So I would only encourage people to contact Anglian Water if they're experiencing low pressure, and we would absolutely investigate and find out what's going on. And obviously, if there is a problem that it's ongoing, there is a compensation element to that. Yeah.
And then I had a specific question about the Langham and Great Walsingham sewage treatment works, and whether I didn't hear whether they were being upgraded, because Great Walsingham had 1,500 hours last year into the Stiffkey of an overflow, and that's the sort of the major one, but Langham, they've both got storm water tanks, both Great Walsingham and Langham, so I didn't understand why they were overflowing at all, but the Great Walsingham one thing certainly was quite significant in terms of volume.
Yeah, so we'll report that back in our detailed spreadsheet, what the action plan for each of those steps.
So I think there was another question on leakage. Was that sufficiently covered for everybody? And then we'll close the session because I'm sure you've got other
Yeah.
things to do.
Thank you, Chair. I've just had really an observation more than anything. Again, being an agricultural area for food production, the data indicates that angular water leakage volume from network is greater than the volume of water extracted for annual production. I just wondered whether that is a true fact, whether your amount of leakages in the area is greater than what is extracted for food production. And I'm saying that because obviously the licenses for abstraction at the moment are going up and up for food production farmers in general to extract water to water crops in what is now a dry area, and we're finding particularly this year. I just wondered regarding the data, what's the process and where are you with leakages? Because the leakages obviously, if you can solve the problem with the leakages, you're probably reducing the amount of capture of rainwater, of reservoirs, etc. But leakage is obviously a big problem.
Yeah, I don't know the data on which is greater, the amount we leak or the amount we abstract, but we'll find that out and get back to you. But as I said earlier, Anglian is one of the best leakage performers in the industry. As mentioned before about investment over the years and in the water industry, and certainly I've been Anglian Water for 30 years, and I remember back in the late 90s and early 2000s, all of our investment was about reducing leakage. The customers were telling us more than anything when we asked them about what they want to spend your money on, it was stop leakage, reduce leakage, save water. And we did, and we spent millions of pounds over those 10 years or so on investing in leakage technology and finding and fixing leaks much more quickly, and also encouraging customers to save water, which I've mentioned before, which is why it's put us in a position today of being one of the best performers on leakage. That's not to say that we can't even get in better, but we are, you know, we've got new technology coming. As Angus said, we've got satellite technology to find leaks. We even got dog sniffers to find leaks underground, all sorts of big mechanisms to track down leakage, and we're putting more and more monitors in our networks to look at those pressure changes that indicate a leak. Leakage is very important to us, and particularly obviously in places like North Norfolk, which is, is rural and leaks are very more noticeable. We try and get to them as quick as we can, not always immediately, because obviously we've only got so many technicians, or as Angus said, we're recruiting more and more people this summer, so that actually should help improve things. But I would confidently say we're one of the best performers on leakage in the UK, and I think our outcome delivery incentive, which is basically what our performance is measured on by a regulator, has pointed that out. We didn't get the best reward for that target because we were already really good at leakage reduction. Even though we got better, others are catching up in the industry, but we're pushing hard to do even more because we know how precious water is. So we're very much a priority for us, as it is for our customers, which say smart metering. But get that in there. So if you get a smart meter, you'll be able to see internal leakage in your property. So that could be like a leaky loo or a dripping tap. That smart meter will tell you that straight away. So if everybody fixed their leaky loo, that will save thousands and thousands of gallons of water across. So there's that part to play for our customers too, our customers in Norfolk and East Anglia more generally are very good at saving water, as I said before. So smart metering is another way of making that even better.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much for coming. And I'm assuming we're all questions. Oh, sorry, you may have one more question.
Sorry, I haven't really had a chance to actually submit the question. But I was just wondering, given that the government has recently blocked Anglian water bonuses, is it really justified that bonuses and dividends should be paid out when we're still having discharges into the rivers and seas?
Yeah, so that announcement, that was a recent change, and our chief executive, along with I think 5 others, had their bonuses stopped because of what's called a cap category 1 pollution. So that was the factor that dictated whether a CEO got their bonus or not. And as I said, we did have a category 1 pollution last September in just outside Peterborough. I think that's still being reviewed, but at the moment it's category 1. So in effect, our CEO won't get his bonus this year, which is quite right, because if we're failing on our pollution targets, then those bonuses shouldn't be paid. So that's the law as it is. Obviously, environmental performance linked to bonuses may be looked at again by the regulator review that's going on. But yeah, absolutely, if we're polluting, then we should be rewarded.
Okay, is that it for questions, Redford? Okay, Councillor Gray.
It's great to hear all of the work and the things that you're doing. I'm really interested in your discussion on leakages and how great you are. From North Walsham's perspective, there's definitely some lacking on finding the leakages because they've been ongoing for a long time. I'm sure Councillor Heinrich could probably recall a lot more than me. But there's many ongoing problems with the infrastructure there with the water. It's eroding the roads, there's collapses, it's ongoing for a long time. I'd like to know, when would Angular Water be adding North Walsham as a priority as the largest market town in North Norfolk?
Well, I'd say we've got investment coming across the district. We'll look into what's planned for North Walsham specifically, and we'll let you know in the feedback notes afterwards. I haven't got that to hand today, but obviously, yeah, where there's a need, we would invest and target those locations. I mean, I can't. I've got specifics today, but we'll share that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thanks everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Much appreciate you taking the time and giving us that really good presentation and answering all our questions and providing some more answers, which you promised to do. We're going to debates and recommendations now. Do you want to go, or because you've got other things to do, or do you want to?
Yeah.
Because then we'll send them. Is that right? I just thought we might have a few recommendations about what we've discussed just now, and then, but mindful of your time, I wouldn't want to waste it.
Yeah, that's no.
So if there's further information that we want or anything, we'll be in touch with you. Is that right? So
I'll send you you got the presentation. I'll send you the answers and later.
yeah. So huge thanks for coming. Much appreciated. Thank you. So I thought there might be some useful recommendations coming out of this discussion. I don't know what you think, but one I thought was perhaps the lobbying MPs for that Anglian Water could be more of a statutory consultee, or I know there was a lobby a while ago about not connecting or disconnecting the rain surface water from the sewage works. That is obviously that's happening with new buildings, but I wondered if you had any other recommendations that you'd like to present to them. I mean, I think we should see them again. I thought that was useful, but we should have them back in a defined time frame. I don't know what you thought about that. And anyway, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, we should be lobbying the politicians. It's ridiculous. They're one of the major infrastructure providers, and they're not adequately, well, they're consulted, but they don't have any significant position. And in this day and age, we're an agriculturally based county. We have a growth of housing. The politicians should be doing something, for want of a better description.
Has someone got any specific ideas of what we want the politicians to do? I mean, they're statutory consultees, aren't they, on developments of 10 houses or more?
Yes.
Do you want to lower that threshold? Do you want to
well,
they did indicate that they wanted a more of a voice in planning. I don't quite know how we would articulate that.
Could we not say that we'd recommend that the Anglian Water have more enforcement powers in the event of developments exceeding their capacity to supply?
Yeah, that's an occasion, yeah.
And to contain the water coming off those developments. It's not only supply, it's the runoff. When you see the hard standing areas.
Okay, supply and sewerage, yes, the runoff. Yeah.
You know, surface water runoff. That's what needs controlling. I mean, the guy admitted it. He said, you know, that's not our remit, but it's their remit at the moment. It overflows and falls into the system.
Okay, so we're going to lobby that Anglia Water has more voice in.
I think there's a
Objective
recommendation
or-
here that Anglian Water revisits their plan in terms of house building and its effect on water supply. I don't believe that we got the necessary clear commitment that they're going to meet that, or that in fact that they've taken it into account. I thought that was a bit wishy-washy.
But it was, and they should be insisting that developers put hydro brakes in,
Yeah.
which is tanks underground that hold
So
the
I
water.
think that's a very clear recommendation from me anyway. And I think I speak in terms of a number of members that they should go away and revisit that and make certain that they are they're linked to the housing plan. I don't get from what we've heard today that they are, quite frankly.
Something along the lines of Anglia Water must revisit their business plan in terms of new development and their capacity to cope with it, something along those lines. Yeah, service it. Would you be happy with that?
I'm freshly drafting something, so revisit business plan and capacity to.
Well, they revisit the business plan in terms of the proposed new development to ensure they have the capacity to service
Both
both
supply and
supply and
outfall. I mean, it's a greenfield, 950 houses on a greenfield site at the moment. Yeah. Imagine that pouring on hard surface area.
That's good. Do we want to, when would you think we'd like to see them, the Anglia Water? Again. 6 months, a year? 6 months?
Yeah, I'd say 6 months. Sounds good.
Okay, so we'll ask them to revisit us in 6 months' time. Should we give them a timeline for the written responses, the data, or would we just expect that to come in a timely fashion anyway?
So I'm happy to request that they provide a response within 2 weeks. I think I did most of the information was requested a week before the meeting. So, and the additional information, there's not that much. So I think if I ask for it within 2 weeks, then I'll just follow that up. So it's ready for your next meeting.
Yes, and it's still fresh in our minds. I think that would be good. Was something there about dry day spills that I didn't quite feel we had enough information on? I don't know, is that too specific a recommendation, or do you think that it's going to come back with that?
You're in the system, then you want some more information on it, don't you, really? If it's not due to excessive rainfall, then the system's failed somewhere, hasn't it? Yeah, exactly.
I mean, could we ask for that to be drawn out of the data that he's presenting us? Because essentially we've asked for a North Norfolk mini version of the big data set that they have, and could the dry day spills be highlighted in that? Does that seem reasonable? I mean, it's going to be a big table anyway. We could just add that field, do you think? Is that okay. Okay. And there was a specific question about North Horsham. Yeah. But yes, could they bring the dog?
To be honest.
Could they bring the dog next time? That would be nice, wouldn't it? So that's quite a lot of recommendations. Is that too many recommendations?
Shall I read out?
Yes, that would be.
So something to the effect of members thank the representatives of Anglian Water for their presentation and note the information provided and request that a letter be prepared. So this is the recommendation on behalf of the committee and sent to the Secretary of State and local MP, I don't know, to request the following be considered and addressed. To revisit the business plan with regard to new developments to service supply and demand and surface water. You said something as well in regard to enforcement powers, but I didn't quite get that. The second one was to request that representatives from Anglian Water return to the committee for an update on a date to be arranged by the Democratic Services Manager in 6 months' time, and to request a written response from Anglian Water to be provided within 2 weeks, which is a response from the original questions we sent, including data regarding dry day spills, to include dates, location, rainfall levels, and reasons. So the only things I don't think I've captured in there is that what you would like in regards to North Walsham and the point that was made in regard to the enforcement powers.
Okay, so taking North Walsham. Would a report from them for the last 12 months activity on leaks be a good snapshot?
Yeah.
I think if you went back further than that, it would be too bulky. Yes, to North Walsham. I think it is, I mean, we've all got leaks, but I think you've got a specific issue with that, is that correct? With the lobbying, should it be us or should we ask full council or cabinet to lobby, or is it our committee's right? Are we, I dare to say, it always powerful and as influential as an entity as a whole?
I think a letter could be asked on behalf of a letter could be sent on behalf of the committee. A lot of it is questions, and there was something that I think I have missed as well in regard to the
Just
statutory
regarding
consultation.
the strengthening the position as a statutory consultee on the planning application. Yeah.
Okay, so are we, do you want to read out the, councillor Bayes?
It's just one, I think, well, I'd particularly like to be added is the process regarding greater engagement with landowners, particularly regarding the effluents and reed bed treatments. I don't think there's enough information out there to identify how landowners might want to get involved, those that are willing to get involved. And I know there are some who are very willing to get involved.
Councillor Cushing?
Yeah, just further, I clearly asked a question regarding Faken. Is what I'm not clear is whether he's actually going to come back and answer that specifically amongst other questions, or do we have to put them in the recommendations?
I thought he was going to reply more extensively to our questions. I don't want to give him too detailed a list of recommendations. Otherwise we lose the point of them rather. So shall we wait and see what we get in the way of responses for that? So, should we include the catchment question about farmers getting involved, or is that too detailed, you think, for recommendation?
It would be good to know their dialogue with landowners in the county or in our district, particularly reed beds. I mean, I've put one in and they're really good. So they are important, not at home, somewhere else.
So we'd like more detail on the mechanism for landowners to be in dialogue with Anglian Water regarding land-based, nature-based solutions.
Yep.
Is that the sort of phraseology?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay. I mean, I think there's a recommendation there about communication about blockages. I don't know if we need to make that a formal recommendation from the committee, do we? I think if we should all be promoting that particular story. I think we could just go away and do that without making it a recommendation, or what do you think? I mean, I'd be quite happy to circulate details from Anglian Water about to the parishes I represent, which I'm sure they don't do already, but not blocking. Nice.
You could do it as a recommendation. They did ask for member support
Okay.
in that.
So I'll Anglian Water in their campaign against blockaging the pipes with various products, and we'd be prepared to represent their case to our parishes. Something along those lines. Does that sound good? Is that sufficient? That's quite a lot of recommendations, isn't it? So you're going to be producing the decisions as you do with cabinet, aren't you? And circulating them afterwards. Is that correct? So we'd have a chance to see what the recommendations are.
Yeah, so what I will try and do, probably be this afternoon and tomorrow, is to capture the outcomes and actions from this meeting. So the recommendations that you've agreed as best that I can. And then I will circulate them to members just to check that I've got it properly. I did have an initial response from the first questions that we sent through to say that they would provide written answers to the more complex questions. So I will ensure that any additional questions that were raised today are added on and sent through to them, just so that they're clear as well.
Okay. Are you content with the wording that you have to hand?
I think with members, like it read through, and then.
Do you want to have it read through again, or are you happy to? Do you want to vote on? No. We have to vote on the recommendations or not? Okay, we better read them out before we vote on them. Otherwise, we don't know what we're signing up for.
That a letter be prepared on behalf of the committee and sent to the Secretary of State and the local MP to request the following be considered and addressed. To revisit the business plan with regard to new developments relating to service, supply and demand and surface water. And the second part of this one is to pursue or to I'm not sure if that's quite right, to ask them to consider whether a change in the legislation is possible in regard to statutory consultees. And the second one is to request request an update from representatives of Anglian Water on a date to be arranged by the Democratic Services Manager in 6 months' time. And then the third 1 is to request written responses from Anglian Water to be requested within 2 weeks. And this is to include data regarding, data regarding dry day spells, to include dates, location, rainfall levels and reasons. B, for evidence with regard to leakages in North Walsham for the last 12 months. And C, information regarding how they consult with landowners regarding nature-based solutions. So that's what I've got down for your content.
Does that sound approximately what you were intending? Councillor Cushing.
Did I catch you said that the local MPs, is that correct? Please.
Okay, so shall we vote on that? All those in favour? Oh, so we did propose to second it. One second, okay. So those, yep, okay, so vote, all those in favour? It's unanimous, yep, lovely, thanks very much.
Here we go, Carol.
Are we wasting the coffee then if we carry on? Okay. Okay, so the next item is the Cabinet Work Programme. On page 29. Does anyone have any questions or observations on this?
I can just provide a brief update if that's helpful, Chair, for 2 of the items on the programme. So I've been notified this morning that the Fakenham Leisure Centre Framework Agreement will be coming through to July, not July, September. It was down for July. So, and that will come through to both Cabinet and then Scrutiny. So that will be moved. It also looks as though the Rocket House Cafe lease renewal is still, there's ongoing negotiations, so that is unlikely to be ready for July, I understand. So that will also move. Otherwise, as I've said before, a lot of these property transactions and lease renewals, they're sort of penciled in for certain dates, but they are subject to change because there's ongoing negotiations. Otherwise, I think, see, the asset management plan, I've still got it down to come to June scrutiny. That's wrong. It will come through in October when it's scheduled to go through to Cabinet. Possibly as pre-scrutiny, that's still to be agreed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that, Emma. Councillor Hankins?
Just a point of clarification on the local plan approval. My understanding is that that is the full final understanding of the local plan. Has it been submitted in its revised form? Is that correct?
That is correct. I can't confirm that that is the correct date that's on this programme, but that when the local plan comes through to Cabinet and then it will go, it has to go to full council for its final approval. That is the sort of final phase of it. It's down for September at the moment. I haven't had an update from the head of planning regarding that. It may well be later, but it's penciled in.
I've spoken to Ian, and I think that's a viable date, quite frankly, but many the slip.
Any other questions, or are you happy to, I mean, note it, do we? This item, yeah, happy to note it. Do we have to vote on it then? On the note, you need to vote on the note, okay. Lovely. So then we move to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee Recommendations Tracker on page 35. Is there any further update on that, Emma? From what we have in front of us?
I think for the action tracker, most of this is correct now. So no, actually yeah, no, that is correct. The HAS one is coming through to October. Let me just see if I can't work it out. Oh, there we go. The net zero strategy and climate action plan, there was no date on there, so I have added a note to bring that as soon as possible. Ideally within the next 3 to 4 months. I need to check with the officers around that because there wasn't, it just was listed as ongoing, and I think there's a feeling from the committee that that needs to come through more quickly. I've added the Rural England Prosperity Fund outcome from the last meeting and regarding a copy of the report to come through from central government to be shared with the committee, just so that that's not lost. And then I can give an update on the mobile connectivity one. We can do that now or under your work programme. Either that you prefer. I did follow up regarding the following for the Fakenham Banking Hub, but I've not had a response yet from the Chief Executive on that, so
Okay.
I will follow that up again.
And the health consultation has been withdrawn. So that's
Yes.
the item on the out of hours.
Yes, I've just added a note there to say members to consider if you want any further updates on that. Obviously, it would go through NHOSC as well, which Councillor Boyle sits on, so perhaps we could have updates via that route, whatever members prefer.
Anybody got any comments from Councillor Cushing?
Yes, following up from Officer Denny, you said I'd like to refer to the net zero strategy and climate plan. We haven't seen that for a long while. Internal audit recently reviewed that and found a number of concerns. So I think we ought to make a formal request that that comes to this committee in the autumn sometime. So September, October time. I mean, the point I'm making, if we're having to wait until March of next year, I mean, this is technically a 4-year administration. If we wait till March of next year, well, it's almost into the final year of the administration. And given that was a flagship proposal, I do think we ought to have sight of that sooner rather than later.
You happy with that, Emma? Yeah. Okay, so that's all on the recommendations tracker. So on the work programme itself, which is page 43. Any thoughts about July? That's the flash is going to slip. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
Realistic timeline, it's having it to. You've got your. This is where it gets a bit fine for October, but the resolution hasn't been really that. The officers. Maybe the second meetings and these sort of quite also within the mother strategy. But I did speak to Councillor Victoria around the mobile data. I'm still collecting that at the moment. We suggested there were 2 options. One was that we could report the July maybe too soon. So this is September. Yeah, that. Given that the officers aren't available, I didn't think that would work. And I didn't have requested perhaps that data could be shared with members by email initially, so you can see. So you're not waiting for a report. I think that members wanted a formal report on the summary of the data. But then once you've seen that, the basis of that, you can then read the providers.
Would it be premature to have the providers in July if we've had the report before?
We don't need to see which providers, the ones that we need to have in to respond to. I think given your schedule for July, put your two homelessness items on that. Jane.
Right.
I'm working with the working team around that they would agree it's a good idea to have the providers in. But I think you will need to do the groundwork, thinking about data collation, obviously to see where the knob spots are, so you can get the relevant providers in. So it's a sort of linking it all them together and then it back to the piece of scrutiny. And I think, as I've said, so you may want to scope that out properly and get out on the scoping documents, even though it's happening.
Because I mean, there's two sorts of providers. There's the broadband and then there's the mobile.
Yeah.
There's only one broadband provider.
There are two separate streams there. One's fibre optic and one's the digital conversion. If I may, a number of us attended a presentation yesterday given by BT, which was excellent, very complicated, very involved. And I think, and I'm making a recommendation here, that that we should consider how that is sort of sent out across the community, because one of the major issues in rural parish councils is connectivity. They don't understand it. They don't understand it. So I think the opportunities there, and BT appeared to be in favour of this, of doing some more presentations on this is what's going to happen, because I mean, it really is involved and very complicated, dealing with people that don't have landlines, people that have landlines, and so on and so forth. And I think, given the timing, we're talking about 27 when that's complete. So, given the timing, I think there is an opportunity for the council to roll this out in some way, shape, or form, so people understand what's going on.
So are you advocating for an earlier session on the digitisation, as it
Yes,
were?
yes.
Rather, is that a feasible thing for July? I'm just worried about the end of the year backing up with lots and lots of meeting reports and us getting overweighted, as it were.
I think we could have them in for July, whether you want to do that through scrutiny committee or whether you want a wider session for all members. So perhaps it's not, because you have got a really pressured agenda in July, and the committee did agree last year, I think, that you try and limit your items to 2 or 3 items per meeting. And I think you're going to find that quite challenging.
How do we make a recommendation that BT come in, if people are reminded that BT make a presentation to the whole organisation? Is that to people's?
I'm happy to talk to BT and see.
Yep.
Well, as I understood it, they could even come along here and make that presentation.
That's what I meant, that
Yeah,
perhaps
because
to all
it was a
members.
national
Yeah.
presentation, you know, but they're very keen to communicate this further down the line, if you know.
That seem reasonable, chaps? Make a presentation to the whole organisation, those who are interested. I mean, I've seen it, but it's probably changed since last year. Well, hopefully it's changed since last year, because that wasn't very satisfactory, actually. The battery length and all that sort of thing. Don't look overwhelmed. Yeah, well, I'd be in favour of exploring that option anyway. Okay, but otherwise you think the work programme is okay? Is that what I'm hearing? Yep. Okay. Councillor Chow, sorry.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I'm not sure whether or not I would want to add to your work programme, because you have got quite a full one, but I would just like to bring something to the committee's attention that you may wish to consider exploring at some point, even if it's with an initial writing to the service providers. I am, and I know that I have colleagues in the town who have noticed a rise in adults who are in desperate need of closer to home substance misuse services. Where we have people who are really, really struggling with that in the local areas, it's impacting housing, it's impacting neighbours, friends, the ambulance service, the police service, and it's impacting the wider community. Now, I know that that's not a HOSC responsibility because I do sit on HOSC. So in part, it's funded by the county council through public health. I'm just wondering whether or not we can make some inquiries as to the level of service that we're getting for North Norfolk and how many of our residents are having to travel out of district to get support, because I know that when these residents need support, they need support at the immediate time. They don't need support and then have to wait until an availability in Norwich, for example. And with that in mind, I would just like to thank some of our teams who've been working alongside these residents very, very through thick and thin, mostly. And it's not just that it impacts the individual, it's a whole wraparound that we're doing. So if the committee is minded to at least make some inquiries to get the information and decide whether or not they would then like to explore further, I'd be very grateful.
Thank you very much. What does the committee feel about that? I mean, it may have started in North Horsham, but we may find pockets of equal deprivation across the patch. Yes, are you minded to explore that? So do we need to fill in the scrutiny scoping document at some stage on this, or is that too formal?
Yes, we don't have to do that now. We can I can sort of have the basics, and then members we can share that and agree it amongst yourselves how to scope it out, because it may take a little time to look at. But
Okay, so can we do that in between meetings, or do we need to decide on it?
we can do it at a pre-meeting. Yeah, we can look at options.
Okay, I'm happy with that. Thank you very much, Councillor Showers. That will be very useful. Any other thoughts? In which case, may I conclude the meeting with your permission? Good. There's coffee outside if you want it. Well done.